Today is July 29th, 2026. My name is Rob Carr of Kalamazoo Right to Life, and this is Pro-Life Week. Well, today will be my third and final installment regarding the Michigan primary, which will be coming up on August 4th, next Tuesday. And I want to just mention, just in this regard, two races. And one of them, actually, I think both of them, the candidates are unopposed. So we're looking at November, the November election. But I haven't mentioned them yet. And one of them is our local U.S. Congressman in Washington, Bill Huizenga. And I mean, I'm thinking back for the many, many years. I mean, I think probably at least 2 decades where our congressman was Fred Upton, who really was not the kind of pro-life lawmaker that we were hoping for. I mean, he was generally pro-life, but he had some exceptions. And for that reason, for many election cycles, he was not endorsed. And then he did kind of come around finally, and Right to Life in Michigan endorsed him. But they redrew the lines back in 2020, after the 2020 census, and Kalamazoo County was put in the 4th congressional district, and we basically inherited Bill Huizenga, who was from the Howland area, I believe. And he really, at least from a pro-life point of view, has been a breath of fresh air. And he's a solid pro-lifer. He's been endorsed by Right to Life in Michigan. He's a great friend of the unborn and of our cause, our movement. So I'm encouraging everybody to vote for Bill Huizenga for U.S. Congress for our 4th district. A great man. I've had a chance to meet him, and he's just a very genuine person. You know, some politicians, you know, they come across a little phony, a little too much of themselves. He's not like that. He's just pretty genuine, which is refreshing for a politician. And the last person I want to mention is the Speaker of the House in Michigan, Lansing, Matt Hall, whose district is the top tier townships in Kalamazoo County and portions of Allegan County. And he lives in Richland Township. And he's pro-life. But when Right to Life was putting together their endorsements, he had not turned in his candidate questionnaire in time. He was a little behind the 8 ball regarding that. And because he hadn't turned it in time, he was not officially endorsed. So when the Right to Life in Michigan mailed out their endorsement card, his name was not listed because he hadn't gone through the full process. Well, subsequently, he turned in his questionnaire, he was interviewed, and he is our endorsed candidate for the 42nd State House District. Solidly pro-life, Speaker of the House, so he has a lot of gravitas. You know, he's got some clout. And if the Republicans can hold the State House, he will continue to be the Speaker. And we need Matt Hall in Lansing to be the Speaker. And if we can get a pro-life governor and a pro-life Senate and a pro-life House, you know, we're back in business, at least in some extent. And I think Matt Hall will be able to kind of steer through some good conservative and pro-life legislations to counteract some of the damage that was done during Gretchen Whitmer's term as governor. So today, those are our 2 candidates that I wanted to focus in on. Bill Huizenga for U.S. Congress and Matt Hall, 42nd House District, part of Kalamazoo and part of Allegan County. Both of these gentlemen need your pro-life vote now in the primary, and especially in November when everything's on the line. So with that, I'm going to turn a page here to some pro-life news from around the country. And I'll be reading some of this stuff. Here's a story that has not concluded. The Massachusetts House of Representatives, dominated by a pro-abortion Democrats by a 5-1 margin. Republicans barely exist in Massachusetts. But the Massachusetts House passed a wide-open abortion until birth bill yesterday on a vote of 119 to 33. So you get an idea how few Republicans there are in the Massachusetts House. State House Speaker Ronald Mariano's office said in a statement that the measure now heads to the state Senate. According to Massachusetts Citizens for Life, this bill would eliminate the state's current 24-hour limit on abortion and allow abortions later in pregnancy based on the undefined standard of a physician's professional judgment. The bill would remove the 24-hour limit on abortion. Remember back, it isn't that long ago that the Democrats, the pro-abortion lawmakers, were pushing for legislation up to viability. They defined viability as roughly 24 weeks after conception. So if 24 weeks had been the goal, the standard, the pinnacle of the position, Massachusetts is now saying phooey on that. So they're going to remove the 24-hour limit, allowing procedures later in pregnancy. It would replace clear legal safeguards with vague standards based on subjective professional judgment of the abortionist. It would eliminate meaningful limitations and accountability for late-term abortions. And finally, it would expand abortion access at a stage when unborn children are capable of feeling pain and surviving outside the womb. That's the whole point of viability. And remember, going back to the Dobbs issue, Mississippi had a 15-week ban, and the courts stepped in and said that viability does not necessarily have to be the standard. They recognized that the Mississippi 15-week ban would be constitutional, and they overturned Roe v. Wade because of that. But Roe had been, and Casey had been, 24 weeks viability. You can't stop a woman from aborting her baby at 24 weeks. Well, now in Massachusetts, they want to remove 24 weeks entirely. It's going to go to the Senate, the state Senate, and it'll probably pass because Massachusetts is Massachusetts. Okay. On August 4th, which is the date of our primary next Tuesday, Kansans will have a chance to push back on a rocketing abortion rate that has grown exponentially in the years following the Kansas Supreme Court's 2019 decision to enshrine abortion in the state constitution. The case related to a 2019 decision that was actually heard years before, but the pro-abortion Kansas Supreme Court waited to hand down its decision until there was a like-minded governor in place, along with a weaker Republican majority in the legislature. Now, it's a little complicated. It says this an unprecedented move by the court ensured its decision to enshrine abortion in the state constitution could not be successfully challenged by the state legislature. Since then, the number of abortions across the state has increased 186%. And the article on lifenews.com showed that back in 2018 and 2019, the number of abortions in Kansas were about 6,500 abortions per year. And then when that Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court ruled that they would enshrine abortion rights in the state constitution, the number of abortions dramatically increased. It went to like 9,000 and then 11,000. And for the last 2 years, there have been over 19,000 abortions in Kansas. This is a conservative state. In 19,000, and they're saying the numbers haven't come out for 2025, but it's very likely that it's going to be very close to 20,000 abortions in that 1 year alone. So it went from 6,500 to 20,000 in like a matter of 4 years. That is horrible. Currently, this is wild. Currently, Kansas Supreme Court judges are chosen by nomination by the Supreme Court Nominating Commission. In Michigan, state Supreme Court justices are elected by the people, the voters. In Kansas, they are nominated by a Supreme Court Nominating Commission. 4 of the commission's members are chosen by the governor. After a public review process, the commission submits 3 final nominees to the governor, who then chooses one of the 3 to appoint as a Supreme Court justice. The governor appoints the justices. 4 of the 7 justices currently serving on the state Supreme Court were chosen by pro-abortion Governor Laura Kelly in just the last 6 years, ensuring decades of the Supreme Court's protection for the abortion lobby, and a radicalized agenda that is dead set on stripping away every protection from children in the womb. Quote, Kansans can bring an end to this reign of abortion by voting yes to the Kansas Elections for Supreme Court Justices Amendment, said Troy Newman of Operation Rescue. So, to the rescue is a referendum that's going to be on the ballot next Tuesday that will take the privilege of appointing Supreme Court justices from the governor, and it's going to give it to the voters, to the people, like it is in Michigan and in most other states. In a recent New York Times article, Planned Parenthood of Great Plains, that's their affiliate in Kansas, bragged that its Kansas clinics have seen a 700% increase in abortions since 2022, with 75% of women coming from out of state. Now here's another quote by this Troy Newman. Quote, Planned Parenthood is making money hand over fist, all because the Kansas Supreme Court has devoted itself to shielding the abortion industry and stripping away more and more protections from children in the womb. If Kansans ever want the chance to restore life-affirming laws and see the Supreme Court uphold the sanctity of every human life, we must vote yes on August 4th for this. Let me see, what's it called again? The Kansas Elections for Supreme Court Justices Amendment. It's a referendum. So if anybody from Kansas is seeing this video, vote yes to let that vote go to the people and not to the governor. Okay, last item. It has to do with Planned Parenthood. House Speaker Mike Johnson, this is in Washington, is advancing plans for a potential 4th budget reconciliation package that could block Medicaid reimbursements to Planned Parenthood after a 1-year restriction expired earlier this month and taxpayer funds began flowing again to the nation's largest abortion business, which elapsed on July 4th, 2026, restoring an estimated hundreds of millions of dollars in annual reimbursements. Pro-life advocates had pushed for a longer or permanent prohibition, but Senate rules limited the measure to 1 year. If we're going to defund Planned Parenthood, it's going to have to come through a reconciliation bill, which doesn't permit amendments to weaken it. So we'll see how this plays out. But if ever an organization does not deserve taxpayer-funded dollars, is Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion killer in the country. Final thought, August 4th, Michigan primary, vote for your pro-life candidates, including Matt Hall for state rep and Bill Huizenga for U.S. Congress. With that, I'll let you go, and I'll see you next time.